All right, so today is September 5th, 2021, and we're going to continue our discussion on the Desiderata Extinctionati. And there's no set agenda today. It looks like we'll leave it as an open discussion. Anyone have any questions they'd like to pose? Or anything we need to discuss?
Should we just do a roundup on who all the people we're trying to contact? Starting with like Jeff Hull and stuff. We're just waiting for a response from Spencer. Is that right?
Yeah. So I've been trying to get a response from Spencer. He said he was going to meet with Jeff Wednesday, but he asked if we had a budget. But I said through your advice here that we don't have a budget yet, and that we're still kind of trying to get a grasp of the situation. But it did seem like he wanted things already planned out. He wanted us to have a budget. So I mean, my thought was that I thought he was. I mean, it'd be nice to have him on board with the idea, and then we'll, the budget and that other, the logistics will come later. But I don't know, what's your thought on that?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny how it's like I was saying. You wave $1 and they'll drop their pants for anybody. It's like they still don't get it. I think that it's like it's for the planet. It's a social movement. It's not a gig, but we'll hopefully get there gradually. But wow, it's incredible how all these artistic types are also damn principled and stand on their high horse. And then, you just, wave $1 around and all the principles are gone. They'll do anything for $1. They just sacrifice any principle for $1. But, we just have to carry on working. Eventually, I think they will get it. But I hope we lose them just because they like, hey, no, we're not political. So it's like, well, destruction of the planet's not political, it's existential. So, but it's really funny, isn't it, how people are so out to lunch on this issue?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's the disconnect. Sophie and I talked about this Dave Wigginton. He's the post on Reddit, how he's watching on geoengineering, and he made a great video about how it's destroying the trees where he's at in Northern California, and they're already just. I mean, if you don't know already, they're already starting this geoengineering projects, even without a public eye. And yeah, I'm closely, I just recently found that, I'm glad that poster posted on Reddit, because I'm gonna follow his what he's doing, and definitely good stuff there. Yeah, and he also has a documentary on climate engineering that I'll plan to watch later. But like I was saying, they're just I don't know if these artist types are just away, are they just don't understand the situation. I don't know how to explain it. I mean, please.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think that is achievable for social movement or something like Extinction Rebellion is to try and oppose tyranny, just to resist, because the way things are going, as crisis comes, traditionally people go totalitarian. And so, all these artist types and gay people and LGBTQ, community and stuff, is those are the guys that get the chop from totalitarians. So it's funny that they have a lot at stake, but they have zero interest in caring about the future. Even though it seems pretty obvious to me what's coming, they just don't see it, not at all. They're still doing the you're on the wrong side of history if you. So it's like, no, history shows that the left wing liberal thing is on the wrong side of history, because things are going to go south, and when things go south, they go fash, right wing fascist, or some kind of state totalitarianism and tyranny. So yeah, I hope people stop with this nonsense about the right side of history. Anybody on the left wing liberal or any fringe group, they're on the wrong side of history. I mean, unless you think it's all going to be sweetness and light, and it's all going to be liberal democracy, and everybody's going to have plenty, and there's going to be social justice. But I think it's obvious that we're heading in the opposite direction. So strange.
But what we were saying before you arrived, Hugh, with Mike, is that there's a terrible a percentage of people in XR who are not in contact with nature, who are urban, and who are not only urban, even probably the ones that live in the country too. They have a disconnection that is so obvious in the way they talk about it. They have it seems like a lot of them, I don't want to generalize. I'm sure there's people who have hands-on and connections and stuff like that. But in general, the feeling you get out of that sub is that it's something abstract, nature, something outside of them. It's just, oh, we'll protect a few trees and the poor animals, and we'll be vegan, and we'll support sea shepherds and all that shite. But when you hear that guy talking there in that video, like, I couldn't put on the camera because I've been crying about these trees. It's just, I don't know. Have you ever, anybody in the group,
I saw
have you ever
one
been faced by a catastrophe around you? Have you seen animals, plants destroy where you live? Have you seen the effect of climate change on the water where you live? Have you felt it in your body? Have you felt this thing that's happening around you physically? Because this is part of us. This is not an artificial thing that you read in articles, and that you just look at charts and measure and components and chemicals and everything like that. It's something that you feel, and I never see that in the people in Extinction Rebellion. Never.
Well, that's why I don't think it's too reductionist to talk about the 5-layered brain, because these people they live in the alien cortex, and they're intellectualizing all of the ecological collapse. They have no connection with nature, because it's the lower 4 layers that have a connection with nature. And so what you're talking about is that feeling is the other 4 layers are feelings based. The alien cortex doesn't really feel. And so it's like Naomi Klein says, it's like, the polar bears don't do it for me. And what she's saying is, I live inside my front brain, my frontal lobes, the alien cortex. And so she's saying, I don't have a maternal instinct towards polar bears, so that's not climate change for me. And so the urban people are living inside their alien cortex. So you can't expect them to hop out of that and suddenly start feeling. It's as I say, you've got to start from a cultish movement. You've basically got to drag them into an egregore and change the culture within the egregore. So you can't fence with the alien cortex. That's what everybody, and me too, on Reddit is doing, is fencing with people's alien cortex. But I'm just trying to wear them out to exhaustion so that you can try, basically do culture change. But yeah, you can't rationalize your way out of climate change, and you can't get people to feel the destruction of nature. So both of those avenues are closed. But it really destroys people that are like us and close to nature, because it's tearing our heart out to see this. And these people have zero emotion. They literally numb. So they numb to the damage they're causing. And you can't reach them at the intellect because they'll just play chess and fence with you till the cows come home. So you have to circumvent both problems. And that's why I say you've got to start a thing and do something like an ARG to drag them into the game. And then once they have loyalty, primate brain loyalty to a group, then they start to adopt the mores of the group. And so you can impose any mores you like. So they even know Naomi Klein, if she's in a group that has as part of the egregore that we care about the polar bears, then she will act like she cares. But you're never going to get to her while you say, you must care, you must care. Look at these statistics. Look, everybody does statistics, and it's like if and that's just appeal to the rational side, your alien cortex. But your alien cortex doesn't give a continental shit about nature. It's actually alarmed about nature, wants and control. So you're saying like, oh, you must give up control. You're saying like, fuck you. I'll give up my control over my dead body is what the alien cortex is saying, and what Naomi Klein is saying in all her books. So, but that is the final end game is the battle between the alien cortex and our traditional brain, our ancestral brain. That's why it comes down to transhumanists, i.e., people dominated by the intellect and alien cortex, and by people that have feeling, and the mammalian brain in particular. That's the end game. That's the final battle that humans are going to have, is the internal battle between their head and their heart.
I wonder how many people in XR are ready to die to defend an ecosystem, to defend the seed. I wonder if they're ready to put their life, like the Monkey Wrench Gang, or people who went really, the Monkey Wrench Gang is a novel, but I mean, that sort of like the of Max Gilbert, the likes of DGR, people who really put their physical welfare on the line to defend a forest or a mountain. I don't know. Does that exist still? Is there people who are ready to physically put their life on the line for that? I don't think there's.
Yes, but the indigenous people. Yeah, they're millions, they're billions, but the indigenous people, they don't come on Reddit and YouTube. So everybody online is intellectual, they're urbanized. And they have zero connection with nature. They're basically a write-off. But in XR, XR is essentially a women's organization. And it's a women's movement. And it's dominated by the mammalian brain. So most of the people say things like, we're doing this for the children. We're doing it for your children. Please, we love you. We're doing this for your children. It's all mammalian brain stuff about the children. So basically, women with ego anxiety, and that ego anxiety is expressed in their mammalian brain, and it comes out as protect the children. And so, you can make a little headway by saying, okay, well, it's all the evil 1%ers, because what you're saying is that's the reptilian brain. is all these, billionaire types. They reptilian brained. So the reptiles coming for your children, Mrs. Mammal. And so you can get a bit of headway out of that. But the primary psychology is mammalian brain with a thin slice of alien cortex defending it intellectually. And if you look on Reddit, on the extinction rebellion stuff, all the stuff I write, you can usually see whether the person's male or female. And you can clearly see the arguments that the women come up with, they kind of half-formed, half-baked, half-rationalized thing. It's just the alien cortex confabulating and working overtime on behalf of the mammalian brain, and the mammalian brain is screaming, protect the children. And so, that's the egregore you're working against. But yeah, I mean, we have to get back to basics, and we have to get back to some of the things that have been forbidden in our culture. And one of them is division of labor, and this idea that, there's no such thing as gender. We need to get over that, because even in a movement XR, you'd be better off making a women's and a men's movement. But combining the two, you get all these mixed messages, and that's all a big mess. So, but I just put something on XR there. Did you see that post that I just put, which is the first thing I did as a post-mortem to the rebellion? And, please go over there and brigade it a bit. But yeah, you'll see how the answers and responses you get they're very, very predictable. And so you could help my stress levels if you actually went and gave the obvious answers to people for the obvious questions. But there's a big danger, and the big danger is half the organization, because they left brain, they want control of the climate crisis. So the danger of, if it's a women's organization coming from the mammalian brain, their instinct is control, because the mammalian brain is thinking, I need control of this rampant lizard brain. I need control of the reptilian brain and all these impulses that are going to destroy the nest and hurt the babies. And so they will go for geoengineering, because their thinking is, will that get control of the situation? Yes, do it. You say, well, it's going to kill all your babies. It's like, but when? Some abstract time, and there's you won't convince them that geoengineering is a terrible idea for the babies, because they're just like, immediate stress, immediate relief, geoengineering, do it. So there's a real battle ahead to sort out the transhumanists against the tree huggers, or the rocket men against the
yeah, but this is not what I hear from real wild mothers and wild women that I know. They're not like that. They don't think that way. They don't think that way at all. They don't think in terms of like that.
But you see, you're closer to indigenous people.
Yeah. Wild, yeah.
But you're closer to indigenous people. I'm talking about people that live in New York and London.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But if you talk to somebody in Africa or India, I think that they will echo what you're saying.
Yes, that lady in India who's fighting for the seeds. What's her name? That woman. I tried to contact her, actually.
Vandana Shiva.
Yeah.
Vandana Shiva.
She's an extremely Vandana Shiva.
Oh, right.
She is extremely like that. She's got that real wild woman, strong streak, and she's a fighter. She's a real fighter. Yeah.
Yeah, for most indigenous women, I think that the big evil bogeyman is white men. Because the colonialism and oppression and all the stuff that they've lost, like land and water and rights to everything, and environmental destruction, it's done by white hunters and white men, white policemen, stuff like that. So, I saw a very funny thing from Trevor Noah. So, Trevor Noah is he had a German father or something, but a white guy, and that guy didn't hang around, so he was brought up by his grandmother. And when Trevor Noah recently went back to South Africa, he took a camera crew with him, and the camera crew were white guys, and his grandmother was kind of shocked. She said, like, that he was bringing white guys into the house, because she said, like, forgive me for being a little bit stressed out, but said, white men to me are like police during a party. So I'm not used to white men coming into my house except to like hold me off in the night. So yeah, I think that's true in a lot of the world, that still remembers white colonialism. It had a white man's face on it.
Yeah, but it doesn't really matter, because it comes back to what you said earlier, the alien cortex, and whatever, whether an indigenous people, white people, whatever, you'll have them everywhere. Like, I've been in places with indigenous people fighting against other ones because of not because of their because of a pipeline, for example. I was on a thing years ago, and you could see nearly 60% of the indigenous people couldn't see any problem in having their fields and their sea and everything destroyed by Shell, and and getting a bit of money out of it, and some jobs. They hadn't any. And the other one, they were all from the same culture, they were all coming from the same backgrounds, but the divide is, it doesn't matter. I mean, the race, color, it doesn't matter at all. That's just caricature. It's total caricature. I'm sure in South Africa, in the Zulu people, you'll have loads of people who will be happy to put the control and the and the logic on everything too, like that. They're not, it's that divide is ridiculous, really. Colonialism.
Well, the same happens in the US as happens all through Africa. And what, say, like Big Oil does, it divides the people, and it simply just promises them money. And they bought off very cheap. So, like the Native Americans and stuff for pipeline, they, the big oil will split the population in two, because they just say, like, oh, we will pay everybody all $4,000. And then half the people would say, look, you can't give up our land for $4,000. And other people say, well, maybe you can't, but they're going to do it anyway. I'll take the $4,000. And so they drive a wedge through the population. And they've always done that. That's just standard tactics in Africa too. They just either buy off the head man or split the population. But the weird thing is, they can be bought off for so cheap because they can just promise. They can just promise, hey, we'll give you $10,000 if you let us put the pipeline through. And like, the $10,000 never comes. They never even have to pay it out, even though it's chicken feed. They don't pay it. So then, then the population is aggrieved and everything. But as soon as they start monkey wrenching the pipeline, then the government comes in, removes them off the land. Or, they can get the government to do their dirty work for them afterwards, because they get rebellious and want the money, want the stuff they were promised. And then it's the government's problem. It's not the pipeline owner's problem. That game has been played all over the world, and played every day.
And tell me where we went on.
It's played with us.
We started to talk about all this, but we were talking. Mike had started about Spencer and Jeff Hall, and we were going to do a roundup of the people we wanted to get in. So maybe we could go back, because I don't know, has there been any progress on the ARG creators, or not ARG, SLIOps, or whatever we call it now, because that's important,
Yes, so I'm just waiting to hear back from Spencer.
Has anybody made any progress on any of it?
And I'm still looking for others. It's tough, but yeah, trying to see who in Meow Wolf would be a good candidate, but it's been tough. Or any artist, trying to see who I can, who's a good candidate for sure.
Well, in Bright Axiom, the artistic director.
Oh, yeah, I'll check. I contacted the other from Jejun, Sarah, but I haven't heard back from her yet. But I think there is someone from Bright Axiom that I can contact her as well.
Yeah, I've been waiting on my side. I've just been waiting for those 2 weeks to end. So now that this has ended, hopefully we can start progressing things a bit more. But yeah, I did a project plan and stuff, and I sent it off. I don't know if they've actually looked at it. They haven't really discussed it. But yeah, it's I just assumed it'd be slow until the end of these rebellion weeks, and then we'll see. What happened to Darren?
Darren, did you read? I mean, I don't know if everybody on the meeting. I tried to do a group mail, so I sent his reply because somebody posted the link on the sub. I mean, the post on the sub that you wrote, Hugh, about him, and there was a few there was a few words that were kind of energetic. So he didn't seem to be too offended. So I I replied to him and just did what we said, asking him to what Mike suggested, to be more precise about his particular projects, movie, books, documentary, and to tell us what was the most important one for him, and how, and that we would be really behind him if he wanted us to support him and to get his work out there. And I explained to him in the email that it was not a video game. I tried to give a little bit short definition, and that the XR thing was more a movement hacking than following, and that and I'm waiting. I just sent it yesterday or the day before when I got his reply, because I only got his reply 2 days ago, and you must have, most of you must have seen it. He was a little bit, but he seemed to have left the door open for me, because he told me, oh, I like you and all that. So I said, okay, if he likes me, well, I'll continue to stay in touch with him, and we'll see if, I think you were right. The gender thing can work when you're trying to get somebody to work with us. That's why I'm sorry Petra is not there, because she's going to be trying with Alison, and I don't know where she is, but she's done a lot of work of studying her videos and listening to her, reading her stuff and her blog. So she'd probably get back to us one way or another. Actually, we might maybe organize a meeting in the week at a better time for her, because it's in the morning for her, because where she lives it's. But for Darren, I'm waiting. I'll certainly post or email anything that comes in when it arrives.
Should we have a meeting with anybody in particular? Is there anybody else that we look good?
I have no reply from Paul. I have no reply from Paul Kingsnorth and Mark Boyle, but Mark Boyle, it takes a while with the post, and I think Paul is busy at the moment promoting his last book, Alexandria. So I think he's quite busy, and he doesn't do much email. I think he checks his email quite rarely. He's not, so I'm allowing for that. So that's all for the moment. I haven't personally, I haven't contacted anyone else at the moment, I think, that I can remember. Yes, I got a reply from the Tompkins Foundation, the people who used to own the Patagonia company, who have got this enormous rewilding project in Argentina, who have bought an enormous territory there. And you posted a video on geoengineering on Reddit about a month ago, and she was interviewed, what's her name, Christina, I think. She was interviewed at the end, so I thought she had a position that was similar to ours. So I sent an email to her website and to her people, but they replied that she was far too busy to have time for her. So I don't know if you have any suggestions to get, but it seems like that's a big corporation, that's a big thing. So I don't know, would they be interested with a little group like us? But I might send another one. I don't know.
Yeah, I think she was in either Planet of the Humans or Bright Green Lies as well, I think. But yeah, Patagonia is a huge company. She's a multi-billionaire. She inherited all the money, I think. But that's her passion project in Patagonia. Funnily enough, which was nothing to do with the company.
Yeah, but she has completely abandoned that now. But she's a very strong stance on geoengineering. That's why I wanted to see if we could. So maybe she wouldn't like to be on an interview, but maybe we could try to stay in contact and try to get messages through. I don't know. I was thinking in terms of funding, game. I don't know. And I have absolutely haven't a clue about how to talk to business people. So I would be the worst one to do that. So
most of people have foundations and things like that they work through, and then those actually have contacts and PR people. So you just go through the official channels and they'll give you the runaround. But it might be possible to speak to somebody in the foundation. Anybody that's that rich who has some issue like geoengineering, they normally do it, in a 501c corporation or something like that. And so it has, contact information.
maybe that could be an interesting way of recontacting the organization, asking what sort of action are they taking against geoengineering because of their stance, and see a little bit where they're going, kind of thing, because they might have some, I don't know, they might be doing some big project that we don't know about.
Yeah, there's broad resistance against geoengineering, and there are various initiatives to actually do like geoengineering watch. So I posted one thing with there's a chart of these guys that keep track of geoengineering projects around the world, and they're just hundreds and hundreds of them. But if you they keep a database of what happens to them, and most of them get thwarted by indigenous populations. So this Dr. Leslie Fields one where she did, this ICE 911, or it's now. She's got kind of thwarted, I think, by indigenous objections to actually deploying these glass microspherules in the Arctic. I mean, it's a breathtakingly stupid idea. But it's an interesting idea it's interesting project from the point of view of just how stupid these geoengineers are. So, I mean, I think Torstein's actually on this call, but Torstein said that the whole idea of sprinkling a cover on the Arctic ice is misfounded, because the ice is actually being melted from the warming sea and the currents and the storm changing weather. So it's not sunlight that's melting the ice. So here she is spending years on this project raising money, and she doesn't even know the basics, like the fact that it's not sunlight that's melting the ice. And so it's that level of stupidity. But on one YouTube video, I did a comment and I said, do you know that basically for every 1 ton of glass manufactured, it emits 2 tons of CO2? And she didn't know. She responded to me and said, oh, I didn't know. I said, how do you know that? And I said, well, it had something to do with the glass industry. But I went back and had a look and said to just check on my figures and see what the latest thing was. It was 3.04 tons of CO2 emitted per ton. So I just cannot see how, changing the albedo of the ice 30% warrants, 4 tons per something like square meter of CO2. It's just you're completely working against yourself. But she was too dumb to know that. She said, well, I just got glass microspherules because it's a commodity product that you can buy on the commercial market. She never actually thought that to use the huge amounts that you'd actually need to geoengineer the Arctic ice would completely transform the glass industry and massively increase demand for glass microspherules. And in all her papers, and she's never accounted for the fact that would emit 3 tons of CO2, which would completely nullify the whole project. And that in general is how stupid these scientists are. That nobody, particularly people in XR, they kind of worship scientists and kind of goody two-shoes liberals that came out of the academic system and, you know, got some psych degree or something, and they all think that, you know, scientists are high priests, and they don't know how breathtakingly stupid scientists are. So it's worthwhile just contacting some of these groups and interviewing these people, just so you can make them look stupid and show people just how misplaced their faith in these scientists is. And would be, and the other thing, I mean, there's so much on just it, there's enough of a project alone on geoengineering. So it would be really good to try and expose these guys, because that paper that I said about, you know, this is a very bad idea, about the Big Bad Fix, I think was the, it's a book, but it was PDF form, I put links to. That really lays it all out. And that, you know, Ken Caldera and David Keith, they're one of a group of about 20 guys. It's just a little handful, just a little coterie of guys that have steered the world towards, you know, geoengineering. And so I think they're very easily exposed. And you know, if Extinction Rebellion did one thing this year, it should be, because those guys, it's not like the oil industry and stuff. It's a group of special interests, and they need funding and stuff, and it's very feasible to have a popular public discourse that basically nullifies that. But you see, it's worthwhile just pursuing it just to get more exposure. I mean, that is something you do want to raise awareness. Raising awareness about climate change is like, you know, selling ice to Eskimos. It's just stupid. But the you know, geoengineering nobody knows about, and geoengineering is very odious, and it's very secretive. And if it's exposed, it you know, the opposition to it could be well worth stopping, because there's not money in it. There's not money in it like big oil or big agro or something. So you just have these scientists that are trying to push an agenda, backed by people like Bill Gates and stuff. But the funding would dry up as soon as it became publicly untenable.
But
so I would yeah, it's well worth pursuing.
yeah, but the Chinese are using geoengineering, and probably the Russians too. But the Chinese are using it for a long time now, and I did a bit of research, and it's hardly impossible to find, like, it's a bit. I've seen some Indian articles, but they have. You say there's a little group of people in the West. Okay, fine, like those guys, those clueless guys. But in China, there's a big group of people who are doing it for the last few years. And I wonder what are the connections between the West and China on this issue of geoengineering, because I sometimes I get a little bit paranoid, but I think that there must be some kind. Look at the bioweapon research in Wuhan. Like that was internationally funded, that lab. It was not just a Chinese project. So these crazy guys, they're probably working hands in hands with the Chinese on all these things. I don't know. I'm just imagining.
Maybe, but you, so it's complicated. But yeah, most militaries do some research into weather modification. So weather, you see, they make a distinction between weather modification and geoengineering, because geoengineering is climate modification. And what they claim is that, you know, weather modification, that is just basically seeding clouds to make them rain and stuff like that, is they say, well, that doesn't have any impact on the climate. Well, it does if you do it enough. You know, basically the weather engineering they did in Vietnam to try and, you know, make the Ho Chi Minh Trail muddy and stuff like that. That was extending the monsoon, and extending the monsoon is changing the climate. So it's subtle. Yeah, it's primarily a military technology, and the military's been using it for a long time. But it helps to raise awareness, because there's a lot of misinformation and there's a lot of conspiracy theories are wrong. So all the stuff about HARP and stuff like that, that's all bogus conspiracy theories. And the contrails and confusion with chemtrails and stuff, that's also bogus conspiracy theory. And it's very likely to be deliberate misinformation put out by the military to discredit anybody that says anything about geoengineering. So that's often a PSYOPs technique, is you discredit anybody that says anything about geoengineering because you rubbish them as crackpot conspiracy theorists, and anything about geoengineering, you call conspiracy theorists that believe in HARP, and then you write a little article, say why anti-geoengineering people are wrong, and then you say, well, they're all conspiracy theorists that think the U.S. military is changing the climate from HARP and changing the ionosphere, and then but that's not true, and it's basically raising these straw men and then shooting them down to make anti-geoengineers look ridiculous, and it works very well. But you can do it the other way around too, right? So it also means that people that are pro geoengineering, you can also make them look like crackpots and discredit them and do character assassinations. And I think that's the way to go. But it's a terribly difficult and thorny thing. You have people like Peter Wadhams and stuff. He actually likes the idea of marine cloud brightening. And so does Paul Beckwith. A lot of these guys, they
even Jim Bendell,
Jim
Bendell, like what,
even Jim Bendell. And
yeah.
I mentioned Faulty said in passing that he said like, well, we might need that eventually. It's like, no, we need geoengineering like a hole in the head. If we've started geoengineering, you can assume we've just underlined our fate and we're going extinct. The moment we start mass geoengineering to modify the climate, you can take it as read. It's a matter of time before humanity is wiped out. Not just humanity. It's basically we might turn this planet into Venus. But you see, it's very fraught because a lot of geoengineering is land modification and land use modification. So in essence, even what that woman is doing in Patagonia can be characterized as geoengineering. So restoration efforts are also geoengineering. And a lot of geoengineering now flies under the banner of landscape management. But it is clearly landscape management with the aim of changing climate. But even reforestation can be considered, forest restoration is also often a code name for geoengineering. So, but when I say geoengineering, I really meant the really cheap and dangerous kind. And the primary, really, really bad one is solar radiation management. So that's Scopex and putting sulfates in the upper atmosphere. That's the really bad one. The next really bad one after that is marine cloud brightening. But, so putting silver iodide up in the atmosphere to make rain and stuff is what the Chinese are doing in Tibet on a massive scale. But it's just to make rain in southern China at the expense of drought in northern China. And then they do it routinely. They did it for the Olympic Games and for any official event. The PLA actually launches silver iodide and rockets and things to rain out the clouds so that it's dry when the event happens. But yeah, the military is going to use it, and so you can take it as read that if we go to war these days, an important part of the war would be climate war. It would be climate warfare, and that this is coming because you can see it in NOAA, and all these kind of weather things, which essentially are civilian. They're having millions now of top secret clearances. So top secret security clearances. And it's like for weather prediction and stuff, for them to have top security clearances, there are a few things you need for like launching satellites and rockets and stuff, but generally that it's some nefarious climate modification thing. But yeah, one of the dangers of going to war is that they certainly, they if it goes thermonuclear, they will moderate thermonuclear war with climate change in mind. So climate So climate modeling and stuff a lot of it is done for nuclear winter scenarios in a nuclear war, which is the scariest one of the lot, because it implies that the guys that will think, hey, no, we can take it up to any temperature we like. We'll cool it down by nuking China. That's as scary as geoengineering gets. But, yeah. But it's the whole mindset needs to be undermined under the much broader rubric of this control idea. There's basically this alien cortex and this hubris of control of everything, down to the weather. And it's like, humans can't control the weather. You're just nutty. You know, Beckwith is crazy. He's just crazy ass. Yeah.
So what would be interesting is that if we want to discredit completely those techniques that you've described, like marine cloud brightening and solar radiation modification, we should maybe find a bit more information and simplified information about these two techniques and show how they are absurd, and maybe that would be more interesting than just using the term geoengineering, as you said, because I remember a couple of weeks ago, our friend Divine Beast, he was saying that geoengineering has started since agriculture has started, and he's totally right, you know. So yes, we that's the two techniques I think we should bombard people with, and saying, look what happens, and you know, and find information on that sort of stuff. Like I'm going to read more about that, because I'm not an engineer and I don't know much about these things.
Well, yeah, the problem is that no one tells you. You have to read between the lines to see what it actually implies. One of the problems with it is with a partial view, you can sell it quite easily, because it's easy to oversell the amount of control that we can expect to have. And so David Keith is very good at it. I mean, he's been at it since, a decade or more, maybe 12 years now. And he used to, you can see on YouTube, he used to basically just about be hissed off the stage at the mere mention of geoengineering. Now that doesn't happen anymore. You can see more and more people are getting anxious enough that they're prepared to entertain that. So yeah, but the bigger thing is to just make people question the hubris of humanity managing everything down to even the weather. But there's another aspect to come in on, is that it's plan A for the economists. So these kids don't realize. They think that, well, it's prudent to have something in our back pocket in case things don't go well, and basically we can't get emissions down. What they don't realize is economists think it's plan A. So the Economist magazine said, you can clearly see in the Economist magazine that they really, really want geoengineering, because the way they see it is, it completely nullifies all these crusties and their stupid tree-hugging shit. Because, once we control the weather, that's it. We're off to the races. There's nothing we can't do. We'll increase prosperity and we'll have this materialist paradise that they all want. And so the economists are the dangerous one. And so you can also do some research on the economists, because what those guys are going to do is, as soon as there's an engineering success, you see that all these kids and like XR and stuff, they say, well, we need to know. It's better to have the knowledge, and knowledge is forearmed, and knowledge is never a bad thing. And it's like, no, it is a bad thing. Knowledge is power, and basically, if you give these people power over the climate, they're going to use it. So the more research we do into geoengineering, the closer we are to applying it. And as soon as David Keith and Scopex and that actually does a successful trial, the more successful trials they do, the closer we get to some kind of Nordhaus character getting a Nobel Prize for saying, like, well, now that we have geoengineering, it's proven science, we need to deploy it, and now we can take carbon up to any amount. It's just a question of how much, how much acidification of the oceans we're prepared to sustain. But then do the economics. acidification of the oceans will cost the fishing industry about 10 million a year. That's nothing. You're saving, just having free reign on carbon and no carbon tax or anything, or no restrictions on carbon emissions. That's worth 1,000 billion, trillion, gazillion to the economy. So yeah, forget the fishing industry, geoengineer our way out of it, and that's where we're headed. Does everybody understand why we shouldn't be doing geoengineering? Because I'm never really sure on this point. You can actually be talking about this, and some people have been going, yeah, but what's wrong with that? I always make assumptions that people know why you shouldn't be doing this. But is anybody struggling with this concept of why you can't be doing this?
Well, one thing you said before was that once we start it, we can't stop. So once we stop, everything will be even worse than what we have now. So that's my one take of why we can't start it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hubris to imagine that we can, maintain that without being distracted by wars or economic collapse. It basically, what you're doing if you do geoengineering to maintain a cool planet is that you've taken on that job and you cannot give it up, even for a week. Just a week would toast the planet. So that's real hubris, because think of what it demands, that if you have a big program, say 2 billion a year, for planes to actually see the upper atmosphere with sulfates. If you, what that does is, if you just think of the logistics and what keeps the logistics flying, it means what keeps those planes in the air. You have to have a steady supply of parts. You need pilots. Those pilots need to be fed. So and you need fuel. So just think how many components and how much complexity you've coupled this control of the global thermostat to. To feed the pilots, you need a stable food system. That you can't have bread rights or something as food security problem that might mean that people are struggling for food in America or something, and then how do you know that the pilots are given priority and stuff? That the pilots might be killed in social unrest or something like that. So then you think, well, the oil has to keep on coming. So if there was ever supply shock, like there was in the 70s, when you can't get gas at the pump, there's no guarantee that they'll prioritize those planes to make sure they get the avgas to fly those missions. They might say, well, there's some military strategic problem on the border that's more important. And the guys that actually run that scenario might not know the climate science and know how important that is. So you see how dangerous it is to actually couple these things to all these other systems. And it includes, will the countries that actually spend this 2 billion always be financially stable enough to actually pay for that? I mean, what happens if we print ourselves into hyperinflation? It turns out like the French assignat, and America has a fiscal collapse. Well, they might not be able to afford to put it up. Now, it's not just America. I mean, imagine India is a very probable candidate for starting geoengineering. They're close to wet bulb mass die-offs from wet bulb temperatures. So the pressure on the Indian government, even the Bangladeshi or Pakistani government, to actually start geoengineering when there's a mass die-off from a temperature extreme in India, there'll be tremendous pressure on politicians to do it. Now, you can easily imagine Modi or something like that initiating that kind of climate engineering in South Asia. Now, it means they can't blink. You see, just as they initiate that in a crisis, that crisis might turn into a fiscal crisis. They might have a revolution and the Indian Air Force gets taken over and cannot fly. And then basically we're in real trouble. So once you start, it's not that you can't stop like an alcoholic, it's that you can't blink. It means that the alcoholic cannot not have a drink for a single day. It's much worse than just saying it's an escalation of commitment. But it is an escalation of commitment with the understanding that you can't blink. It's so it's so batshit crazy. It just beggars belief. But that is how batshit crazy we are.
But also some of the chemicals.
Our survival depends on backing off and stepping down.
But some of the products that are going to be used for solar radiation, solar, how do you call it, solar radiation modification, and for marine cloud brightening, like they have to be produced too. They have to be brought. They have to be, it's not. They are all rather cheap. Most of the things that I use, but they still have to be processed. There's still a chemical industry behind that too. So that's another component. Like if there is a collapse of any kind, those things won't be. I mean, it's like, look, at the moment there's some farms in America who are still waiting since the spring for their fertilizers that are produced in China and that they can't get because of the crisis with containers, So I mean, this is happening now.
The supply shock.
Yeah.
Yeah, but can you imagine the hubris that says, "Oh no, we'll always have a supply of sulfates"? Like, what happens if you know how it's going to go down? They're going to award the contract to some like Rio Tinto or some place that has a monopoly, and then basically that company is going to go into bankruptcy or something, and then you won't be able to get it. And you say, "Well, we'll source it from somewhere else." Oh no! Oh, we forgot. We gave away a monopoly to Rio Tinto. And you find there's no source while the military is running around trying to find where to get sulfates. I mean, sulfates are easy to get. It's basically rock. So it's basically just, you can just get concrete and crunch it up. But you see what David Keith and those guys are talking about is they're doing the research. And this is another reason why the research is dangerous. They're doing the research into finding out exactly what kind of particles you want to put on. And what they mean is what size and stuff. So you can see they're thinking you're going to manufacture them especially for purpose. So they know that if you have just the right size, you minimize the amount of radiation blocking, you get the most albedo with the less, kind of sky whitening and all of this. But so, but it's a trade-off. So the bigger the particles, the less they stay up. So that's why they're doing all the research to find out exactly the perfect particle. But when they've got the perfect particle, you know that it's going to be awarded to some scumbag like Elon Musk or Bill Gates or something like that. Because, see, Bill Gates holds his name's on the patents and stuff. And the reason it's on because you see these guys know which way things are headed. So you know damn well that before this goes too far, Bill Gates will miraculously own the only sources of sulfates. you know that it's implied. Or they will find that, well, the sulfate precipitates out and basically acidifies the ocean. Then you'll need some counteraction for the acidification of the ocean. And bingo, who owns the monopoly on that technology? Oh, just happens to be old Bill. Always at the right place in the right time. But goodness, you're all for humanity, Bill. So anyway, Bill, you have the monopoly. So it's like it's so nutty from so many angles, and we sleepwalking into it. It's just unbelievable.
And then I wanted to say the long-term consequences. We don't know what geoengineering is going to do. We've already seen damage to nature, but also to people. And then you're going to have more climate refugees. It just makes the problem worse. Potentially.
Well, we know what solar radiation management does because volcanoes do it. It's basically just, you can just get volcanic ash and shove it up there. And that you're mimicking a volcano. But you see, if you look at a volcano like the one in Iceland that went off in like 2016 or something like that, it's not neutral in any way. So, there were a lot of flights that were grounded and things like that. So, you might get a situation where an airline says, well, we fly at 37,000 feet and your crappy geoengineering is destroying our planes. then they can have a lawsuit, and some judge in Poughkeepsie can rule that they have to stop geoengineering until they sort out the case. So it's that absurd. But it's politically not neutral either, because they've modeled it already, and they know that they can increase the crop yields in America at the expense of China. You tell me that some psychopath like Pompeo or something like that isn't going to push for that. Is like, oh, screw China. We can hold them off with atomic weapons, but we can have better crops than them, and that'll increase the GDP. And all the economists will say, yeah, works out for us in Nordhaus.
But
And that'll cause global war. It's just.
Do you know, it's the same. I find there's a parallel with the concept, the same concept for the human body in medicine. The not understanding that one thing that you intervene on completely affects everything. Like, for example, antibiotic cover. I'm not saying antibiotics are bad. I'm saying that, and more we've seen people getting antibiotics for no reason, or just because in case they get infected. Like that has been more and more an indication for prescription of antibiotics, for doctors covering their ass not to be sued, or all sorts of things, all sorts of reasons, using more antibiotics. Just and there's some people, for example, I don't know, I've seen people coming with a dog bite something, and okay, they can get a tetanus vaccine and clean the woman, but a lot of doctors would not put them antibiotics, but a lot would say, oh, well, I better give you some in case, not say, we'll see you. And that is just a tiny example, but it's the same thing, the same concept, the lack of understanding of interactions and complexities, and how when you act on one biome, you touching the whole thing, and you create an imbalance. And it's the same reasoning in science that is gone completely insane.
Yeah, and you either get it or you kind of don't. But it's exactly like you're saying with medicine. There's also this long chain of unforeseen consequences. So what happens in medicine, as you know, is like you go in for one thing, like blood pressure, and they give you Lipitor, and then that screws you up in some other way. Then they give you something for that, then that screws you up in another way. And eventually you're having 15 medications for all the complications and side effects that you got for your first problem. And overall, your health is worse than if you just hadn't started down this path. But that happens in ecology, that happens in medicine, that happens in engineering. It's what we've done. It's what the alien cortex does. It's trying to get control. And the more control it gets, the more unforeseen consequences there are. But you see, economists say, this is not bad. It's like, that's extra jobs. We have extra jobs. Eventually we'll have full employment. Basically, when the climate goes wrong, that's a job opportunity. We'll have a new industry, which is fixing damage that geoengineering did to the climate. What's not to like? And basically, we've already gone too far, but they don't accept it, and they're going to go further. But you see, that doctoring and engineering and controlling mindset is the alien cortex. So you always get back to the fact that it's killing us. It's killing us. But it's defending itself. You have to get woo and mystic after a while, because the David Keith is an alien cortex defending itself, and so he's not going to relinquish control. He'd rather die. And so we are at war with our own alien cortex, and it's a war we've already lost, because the damage that we've done, we're in overshoot. We've passed the tipping points, so we're screwed. We're gonna hit the wall at the speed of sound, and even now people can't restrain themselves. So it would be better to hit the wall at like 50 miles an hour rather than 100 miles an hour. But we can't even do that. We can't even admit that we're going to hit the wall.
Well, I was reading a recent study
Well,
in one of the universities there in Ireland, and they, since in light of the skepticism towards the vaccine and all that, there was a whole bunch of psychologists, study on what's happening. Why are people not trusting science, medicine, and government anymore? And they've analysed the data going back a few years, and there is a rising percentage of people who are starting to doubt science and medicine and general, powers to be. But the conclusion of it was very interesting to read the analysis of the study by the professors who were doing it because themselves belong to that church, and they were saying, this is a very worrying trend. Like, people are starting not to trust doctors, not to trust science. And what can we do? We're going to have to control this too, because this is a terrible thing. So it's getting more and more complicated, Oh, yeah. Mm.
so they've always done that. I remember in the 90s reading, New Scientist and Nature and stuff. And scientists, even back then, they did a lot of hand wringing about why do scientists have such a bad rap? How do we get rid of this, kind of Dr. Strangelove image and this mad scientist in a white coat? And you say, like, well, by not being that way? Have you ever thought of that? No, we never thought of that. We want to be mad scientists, but we want a great press. We want to be. But in some ways, they achieved it because all the geeks in Silicon Valley made geekism respectable, because the geeks got to be billionaires, and then they were like, see, geek is cool. And then now we're stuck with geek is cool, and the scientists also get the spillover from that. So they used to be ridiculed as silly wonks, but now it's like, well, silly wonks are billionaires. So it's like, oh damn, we ran up against the other cultural trope that greed is good. So yeah, but they that is our biggest strength as Team Human, is that those guys, we innately terrified by that kind of Klaus Schwab image and all this guys in like lab coats. It is terrifying. I mean, it's like even a dog in a vet knows that this is not a good place to be.
But I think it's only terrifying.
Put their tail between their legs.
I think honestly, when I look around, I mean, us, yes, our group, the people on our sub, and a few of our friends and people we're close to, but in general, the majority of people search reassurance from the white coats and all that. They're really looking up to them. Look at the vaccine situation, for example. Like in my country, 90% of people took it with a big smile, and and they're wearing a badge. I'm vaccinated. Oh my God, I've done something so good. I'm not saying that I'm not advocating one thing or another, but what I mean is that they're really looking up to that. So I don't think it might be increasing the distrust, but honestly, in general, and even in the emerging, what you used to call the third world, and these people are starting to look up to science and doctors and everything in an enormous way. Like, it's just, I don't think there's any trend of distrust apart from a few labeled as mad as we are.
No. I think there's a growing. No, there's definitely a groundswell. So all the anti-vaxxers and stuff, like that is a groundswell of distrust that
That's the
racism,
right
of
wing.
distrust
It's
of
extremely
authoritarianism.
yeah, but it's extremely backed
Yeah.
by extreme right.
Yeah,
All that.
But
yeah,
where there's smoke,
we've got a.
I was just gonna say, where there's smoke, there's fire. So all these people that we consider are conspiracy nuts, there are really, like, we've discussed this before, there really are conspiracies. So maybe their metaphors are extreme or over the top, but they can sense that something's not quite right, that there's a lot of things that are being lied about, suppressed, not revealed. So they go and have, yeah, they always say, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist, but there really is a conspiracy, so it's not a theory. It's real.
Yeah, you see, I think there's a very definite advantage we have, and that's that they haven't quite politicized the transhumanist issue. So it's not really a left-right divide yet. But you see, it's much easier to convince the right wing that things like, you know, scientism and rationalism and stuff are not cool. The liberal left are really house slaves, and they're really, you know, educated and sold to the system. They've sold out to the system. So they are really hard sell. But within the left, the hippies predominate. So the left needs to be divided vertically. And what we need to do with the SLIOPs is to make sure that it's transhumanists against Team Human, because that's cross-cutting that doesn't polarize it in left and right. But there's only a limited amount of time to pull that off. If they get their way, they'll be like, they'll make it a left-wing divide. And so it'll be, left-wing people trust the scientists. And so, geoengineering is fine because the scientists say it's fine. And then it'll be like, oh, you're one of these right-wing conspiracy nuts that think, geoengineering is all about HARP and, chemtrails and, read a book also. And then it'll split down left and right wing. And then we're fucked. If they can split it vertically, blue and red, then geoengineering will go ahead. So we have a limited amount of time to cut it horizontally and say it's tree huggers against rocket scientists and lab coats. And if we do that, then we still have the majority. But split down the middle, it's 50-50 and it's deadlock. And deadlock. And if they achieve deadlock in the opposition, then they'll go ahead by default and do geoengineering. But yes, yeah,
I think geoengineering. I think one of the big things geoengineering will win. One of the big reasons why it might win is fear. When things go really bad, people will be. There won't be any revolt, anything. It will be bought.
No,
there'll be no other choice, and people will say,
no.
No, it's not what I want. Don't get me wrong.
My gut feel is that this is the final straw. I really feel very strongly that this is the final straw. The transhumanists cannot do this. This is their final comeuppance, because everybody, you see, people will go with things like, green tech fixes and stuff like that. That's it doesn't affect. I mean, it's an affront to the sacred. But if you're talking about geoengineering Mother Earth, everybody knows that, like, come on, dude, you were just edging on the, on defiling the sacred, but everybody knows you're a psychopath now. That, you see, if you cross, this is the final frontier. It's kind of like the last red line. If you're this stupid, then the game's off. Everybody's against you. And so this will be their comeuppance. You see, the scientists have done well out of the fear ticket, because all that's at stake is you shove government subsidies at them and stuff like that. But nobody likes scientists, right? And basically, the villains in movies, apart from like in Jurassic Park and that. But the most scientists can aspire to in the popular culture is the scientist who gives the warning that the politicians ignore. But in general, if you're looking for a villain, it's got to be Dr. Monroe, or it's got to be Dr. Strangelove, or so everybody's innately hostile to the alien cortex. But this is the crown jewels. So this one isn't going to be the same. This is where basically this is Hamlet, right? This is where Scar goes too far in The Lion King. But this is definitely the final hurdle. So this is why I think, we win, but it's close run.
Yeah, and
You see, it could get to the stage where they do it unilaterally. So where one of the scenarios that can happen is there's so many crises going on, kind of like daily, like now, that they can do it under the cover of all the other crises. So in other words, if there's a war, they'll be able to do it. There's nothing you can do during a war to counter it. So I believe we're heading for war. So we only have a limited amount of time before we can actually, discredit this. But I believe so strongly about this that if we can prevent geoengineering, we could probably prevent them going to war, since it's so tightly bound to what their war planning must be.
That's a very interesting link to sell to a lot of movements who are pacifists and anti-war, this sort of optic of if you want to be anti-war, oppose geoengineering, because that would find.
That's why I think we win.
That's a very good argument.
But you get the whole CND crowd, everybody. Everybody would say this is a step too far. You see, because it's military technology. And so, in other words, they're flying under a lie. And so all our task is to expose the lie. It's not that huge a task. But you see, imagine if, say, XR, if we could turn XR around, and so that they'd say, like, okay, we're going to boycott COP, and because it's too late. And it's too late for CO2. We passed the tipping points. The IPCC is full of shit. And so then you say, we're on to the next game. And the next game is to stop people trying to geoengineering us out of this disaster. Now, there's still room, a lot of room. Imagine if people did a rebellion against geoengineering in the streets. That's a little bit hard for people like David Keith and that to talk their way out of. See, they're flying under stealth. They're doing this stuff in secret, and they're lying. They're misrepresenting what they're doing. So they're very, very vulnerable. Right.
Well, wouldn't it be really interesting?
You see, they'll spin a little web.
Wouldn't it be really interesting to get somebody else than Claire and Roger, but somebody who's quite important in XR, and have him have a conversation with us about this subject? Somebody that would be, because we haven't.
We'll get there.
I don't know people in XR. I mean, I'm sure there's people here who probably know some. I know a couple in Ireland, but they're just really farmers, and they just
one step at a time. No, one step at a time. I mean, first of all, XR is a flat organization, and it's a free for all, and everybody has a voice, and it's just a noisy room. So the first step is to get over that. If you can get to the stage where the organization has proper leadership, then you can establish, now you have to shut up and listen to the boss. When you get to that, then you can influence the boss to start telling people what they need to do. You see, as it is now, is people say, if this is not suiting me, and it's not non-violent, and it doesn't have a guilt invitation, and it doesn't come with flowers, and it doesn't fit with my LGBTQ leanings, and if it isn't about animal rebellion, then I'm not in. And the organization goes, oh, no, please don't leave. And you need to get to the things where you're saying, like, really? Fuck off. And then people will stop leaving. If people know that, like, you want to leave? Fuck off. Well, people stop that threat of leaving. In fact, they stop leaving. If you have this threat to say, if you want to leave, fuck off, we don't need you, you'll suddenly find that no one leaves.
Yeah.
But what they want is a strong organization. And so they're undermining themselves by being democratic and nice and stuff. everything about XR is conflicted. It's the same old level. It's all, decision bound, conflicted, morality bound. It's just this circle of logic that's completely undermines itself. And so you can't get through that while you keep it a big collective and you be inclusive. So this that XR has to go through is they need to cleanse their mindset. It doesn't even really matter what mindset they come up with in the end of it, but you need to cleanse yourself of all these conflicts, these cognitive dissonances in the organization. So it's riddled with contradictions. I mean, the people themselves have contradictions right down to their last brain cell. You can see in these guys who talk in the 2 weeks of rebellion that in one paragraph they will have such a stew of contradictions and logical impossibilities and just fucking nuts shit. And in one paragraph, even sometimes in one sentence, you'll have these oxymorons and truisms, and it's just a stew. So the very first thing is to just basically get their thinking aligned so that they're pointing in one direction. And so once you do that, then you can start steering them around. But while the cats are all in every point of the compass, you can't actually get the movement going anywhere. And that's what they're finding. Eventually, the cats just wander off in different directions because there's no center. And so the first thing is to get a center, and that's I think what we're all working on currently. And if you go and have a look at the post that I just put on Extinction Rebellion now, just before this call, you'll see that's the first proposal that I make, and I expect it's going to shock a lot of people. But so please come in and start brigading it, because you see everybody knows me now, and I need backup because they start to know where I'm coming from. But something is very interesting is happening on the sub, and that's I'm wearing people down. See, I come up against these people again and again, and they're starting to shut up. I thought that for a while there, I thought they just have bottomless shit, and you'll never change people. But I'm learning that you can wear them down. You just come out again and again against their same bullshit, and you wear it down and wear it down, and eventually they stop arguing. They really stop arguing. So you actually start to win the argument. It's dreadfully hard going. It's a real slog. But I thought really that it's kind of unwinnable, that these people you can't fix stupid. But you can make stupid shut the fuck up. And that's what you really need to, align all the molecules, align all the bar magnets in the same direction. Is you just need the fucking contrary idiots to shut the fuck up. You don't need consensus thinking. You just need the opposition thinking to climb up. And it's possible. I mean, I don't think I convinced anybody. I never turned anybody around. But I got them to shut up because they realized the arguments were untenable.
How many members in XR?
It's very funny. Some people have actually come back and well, there's 60,000 or something on the mailing list. There are 20,000 people on the sub, on Extinction Rebellion sub.
Mm.
But all in all, they could probably count 100,000.
Is that the main online platform they use, you think? Or are they active on other media, like their website and their, I don't know, social media like Facebook?
No, Facebook. No, Facebook and YouTube is much more active. So their website, Facebook, and YouTube is much more active. But you see, what I like about Reddit is that the thoughtful people go there. So you can't. I don't even bother with things like Facebook because you can't advance an argument. It's like Twitter. It's just too soundbitey. And so, but you see, the people, it seems to me, I hope I'm not fooling myself, but I think the people on Reddit, they actually are thoughtful and they're kind of intellectual. So you see, you don't have to convince the whole organization. You just have to plant a seed and let it grow in some of the people. So if say like 1 in 10 people hangs out on the Extinction Rebellion sub, if you can change the mindset on just that one forum, it will bleed into other forums, and it's likely to do it in a good way. It's likely to do it in a way that, say, the leadership and all the guys, all the trolls and all the guys who've infiltrated and on behalf of the state, and all these guys who have non-violent agendas, and basically people that are corrupt, they won't know where it's coming from. They'll just see these ideas bubbling up from somewhere, and then they won't be able to counter them very easily. You see, eventually you get to the stage where they have to address the issue. As soon as they start addressing it, you've kind of won. But it's very valuable to actually get the mainstream leadership or the thought center or the thought leaders and stuff, and to drip feed these ideas so that they don't know where they're coming from. So I think I like Extinction Rebellion's Reddit sub because I think it fits the bill for that. And so, yeah,
thank you. Yes,
I
was
like I'm
wondering.
advancing a conversation.
Yeah, that's very clarifying, because I agree with you about the uselessness of Twitter and Facebook for many other reasons, but for XR particularly, I think if there is 20,000 on the sub, well, registered, and there's 60,000 on the mailing list, that means a lot. Like, and even though there might not be a lot posting, but there might be a lot reading it, and yeah. And anyway, they link to a lot of their YouTube content.
Yeah, there are a lot of people reading it.
Yeah, and they link to a lot of their YouTube content, and I think that they seem to be uploading on YouTube quite a lot. So it might be a good idea too that when we comment on a YouTube on an XR YouTube one that you cross post on us, so that we go to the YouTube and put some comments under the XR videos, because I noticed that there's not that many views on YouTube. They're not really, it's not enormous. So I don't know if people read the comments on YouTube, but I think it might be worth even repeating the same comment that you put on Reddit to put it on YouTube too, even though it's a bit strenuous and time consuming. But I think it might be a good idea that everybody kind of just comments and.
No, but continuous repetition is important, because you see, from the leader's point of view, is they say, we're hearing on the troops out there that blah blah blah. People are beginning to say blah blah blah, and they don't realize it's us. It's just a small group that's shouting rather loudly in a corner. So you don't want to stand at the podium and start shouting your head.
No, you want to be infected.
If you stand a good deal away and shout loud, that basically the message can propagate to the podium.
You want to be like
better off.
Yeah,
see what I mean?
You want to be like an infection. Or an infestation. I don't know.
Yeah, you basically you want to agitate the web from the edge. Yeah, you want to make the web tremble from the edge, right? But I think it's kind of working. I mean, have a look at the post that I did. I got like 108 upvotes on the last thing, basically saying that Exxon needs a root and branch reform. So some of the old gods, like Zeno Arrow and stuff, made a few weak objections, saying, "Oh, I did that poll as well." And some of them made the weaker objections, saying like, "Oh, it's just the way you worded that poll and stuff." But I laid it on. You see, when they make those objections, you've got to follow up and find more arguments. So I followed up and backed them up by YouGov poll and backed them up by what the Guardian said and stuff. So it's really starting to weigh on all these arguments. And the ones you want to weigh in against is these shibboleths that you keep on getting. They're all these little mantras and conversation stoppers, and that's part of cult behavior. It's a cult, right? So to undermine the cult, you need to question the articles of faith, and you need to question all their shibboleths and all their mantras. So you get these mantras like, for example, violence doesn't solve everything. It doesn't solve anything. And it's like, bullshit. Violence got rid of apartheid. Violence got rid of Hitler. Violence just basically ousted America from Afghanistan. You're talking shit. Fuck off. And then it's like, whoa, nobody's ever said that. We all just go, yeah, you know, we all say violence doesn't solve everything, and everybody goes, Om Shanti, you're so right. And they're like, that's against the rules. You're not allowed to stand up in the cult and say, hang on, this article is bullshit. And they're like, people are freaked out. So they start trying to defend all the stuff, and in the defense of it, they unravel because it's completely indefensible. You see, most of the articles of faith are lies. It's exactly like this thing about nonviolence. So they put nonviolence first, then they have all these rational arguments to support it. And basically, all of them are bogus, but you know nobody questions them. So the thing is to question them, and then they have to think up a new defense. And then you question that. And after a while, they run out of them and shut up. Then after a while, they don't, you know, with me, they've learned not to come up with this Gandhi shit and stuff like that because they know I shoot it down so badly and ridicule them and bully them and stuff like that. So they stop doing that. Now the only people I get are people that don't know me. And they come and do it again, and then I just pummel them again. But they start to disappear because people know they know that they aren't hiding to nothing doing that. But what it means is that, you know, that's the end of that little piece of lie. It's a bullshit little atom of nonsense in the cult. And so you break those atoms down one by one by one, and then what's left is the egregore of the new cult, and that's how you change them. But that's the way you change them this way. Way is to just get the boss to tell them the new party line, and then they have to change. But we're not there yet. We're still getting to the stage where they have to accept they even need a boss. Well, anyway, so is that enough for this evening, or did we have any other topics to discuss? Did anybody have any questions or objections to what I'm saying?
I guess the only thing I want to ask is any updates on what's going to happen in the next coming, you know, with faulty XR and the whole plan in October, right? And Ramsey.
Oh, so what's agreed on is that we will do what I'm doing now on Reddit, and that's to basically not let them get away with yeah, this was a huge success, you know, yeah, we raised awareness. You know, there's another one bullshit thing. It's like, we raised awareness, and everybody goes, hurrah, awareness. And he's saying, like, guys, stop this shit. Awareness does not correlate with a reduction in CO2. You can raise awareness to any level you like. It's not coupled to ecological destruction and CO2. So stop saying we raised awareness like that actually means anything. Awareness does not result in any kind of effective solution for the environment. So stop that shit. And that's very new thinking for them. It's part of the deeper psychology of liberal left and individualism, that opinions count, and you know, my opinion is important, and all of our opinions together make for change and stuff. And you say, no, they don't. Your opinion means fuck all. What you believe, no one gives a shit. You don't matter. You're just some turd of 8 billion turds on this planet. Just stop getting so self-important. And so that's the truth of it. They think that, well, we can change people's minds. It's like, changing people's minds doesn't keep the fucking carbon in the ground. Especially Exxon is still there taking carbon out of the ground. So don't come with this shit. So a lot of the stuff is not letting them get away with fooling themselves, and that's our task now. Now the next one is COP26. So what they said in all their planning on these 2 weeks was, after that we'll come out of the 2 weeks. This is literally what some arse said. One of their planners is that the government will be reeling after those 2 weeks. Well, they're reeling with laughter, but I don't think anybody even told Boris Johnson that they were on the streets of London, and I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't know. So anyway, the government is not reeling. And so then they said, and then from that, we'll go straight into COP, because all roads lead to COP, and that's where it really matters. It's like, COP is a cop-out. COP was started by the oil industry to prevent change. So it still has that legacy. COP is there to basically window dress the lack of change. So if you go to COP, you're endorsing it. They need the activists to be there at COP. If they don't have the activists there, you're doing activism as normal against, business as usual, then basically something will look wrong. They have to window dress it so that the COP looks just like the same old shit, nothing new, 26 in the line, it's normalcy that it's an image of normalcy they're trying to create. So by going to COP, you're reinforcing that normalcy. If no one turned up at COP and they had a boycott COP, people go, what? That doesn't make any sense. It's like, we're the protesters. Well, that's a hiccup. That's a serious visual flaw. That's a bit of optics that the COP can't afford to have. So the COP needs you down there protesting. But these guys are not smart enough to figure that out. So they're liable to go to COP. But what we need to say is start a campaign for boycott COP and make these arguments for why you don't want to go to COP. They will go to COP, but what we want is the high ground to say, you went to COP, you're an idiot. Look, see, all you did was endorse them. They didn't do anything. See, what Rupert Reed said during these 2 weeks. Rupert Reed is big on COP. He likes all the Davos and COP. He likes to hang out with his pals and protest them. But what he said was, well, it's obvious that in COP26 they're going to come and say, basically do some outrageous foobar about, just utterly incredible, just stuff that's embarrassingly inadequate for the climate change and stuff, and outrageous. And he says, and then we swing into action because, we all go nuts about the outrage of the outcome of this last COP. Well, that isn't going to happen. There are not enough people. And XR itself is whittled down too much. And they're not Fridays for Future and all the other groups. There are not enough people that care enough about the outcome of COP to suddenly do a massive rebellion in the wake of it. It's not a spark to spark an insurrection or whatever they think they're doing. So from our point of view, we need to tell them not to do this, and afterwards, after COP, tell them, yeah, we told you so. So the idea is to discredit the current techniques so that basically they're worn out, and the current guard is the Hive and all these guys that currently are steering them, that basically they will have to lose control because they're becoming so ineffective. So that's the next thing is COP. Then what will happen in October is that then the hardcore guys will come and do mass arrests. So basically 160, somewhere between 160 and 300 people will be arrested continually for 4 weeks. Holy shit. But anyway, if you, I mean, I'm laughing because it's just so. I don't know how this is going to turn out, man. But I think the way it's going to turn out is that the police are going to, even before the police crimes bill, I don't think the police crimes bill will be out then. They might push it out really fast if they think it's going to be really disruptive. But what they're likely to do is to stop doing arrest and release. And I think they'll just chuck all the people involved in jail and hold them on remand. And so that the 2 weeks will end rather sadly. I mean, the 4 weeks will end rather sadly, I think. But anyway, the strategy is, the agreed strategy is that the new tactics of hardcore, hit them where it hurts, mass arrests, and none of this pussyfooting around with glue-ons and banner drops and LARPing. Is it like that will be discredited, and we'll start this new hardcore thing. So yeah. So then, at the end of that, the closing ceremony of that we designed is the first kind of fun thing that's more like an ARG. So the first introduction people will get to this new way of, kind of humorous way, and basically centralized control and single leadership. So yeah. So in the meantime, then that plan will go forward. But in the short term, then is just designing, what happens after COP, and and then what happens after that November rebellion. So yeah. So then If I left anything out, the other two things are the recruitment thing, which Sophie was looking into, and that was talking to to these institutions, trying to find more radical kids, and then Chris Hedges and other personalities, and getting them involved in that. But start to design recruitment and how recruitment meeting works. But one of the things that if they'll go for it, I think would be powerful, it is a little controversial, is using those kamikaze headbands, so that anybody that was an arrestable would wear a kamikaze headband and would become kind of like a kamikaze pilot or samurai, kind of headband of honor. And then you would go to, say, recruitment meetings, and you would have like 10 of those guys that would do witnessing and stuff, and wear those headbands, and you have to earn them. So that's something. And then there was the Russell Brand thing, and that was frustrating because I happen to know somebody who knows Russell Brand as a personal friend, and she wouldn't ask. She wouldn't ask Russell Brand if he would do that, XR shaman role. And I didn't want to delve too deeply, because she said, well, I got the impression that she knew him personally, but they were on a rocky footing. So she kind of said that she would do our case worse than if we just approached him anyway. But yeah. So anyway, that's the roundup of the plan so far. So hopefully they'll get back, and they haven't completely gone cold now after this, impossible rebellion 2 weeks.
How about Faulty's connections? Do you think he has connections to Russell in any way?
I don't know if he has connections, but I presume he does, yeah.
Yeah, that could be worth exploring. I don't know how else to reach out to Russell.
Wait, you were quite soft there. I missed that.
Oh no, I was saying I wouldn't know how else to reach Russell except through Faulty's connections. Yeah.
Yeah, so this contact of mine said that, yeah, you should just try on his YouTube videos and stuff, because he does respond. He said he's not that famous a figure, apparently, that, you know, he doesn't talk to anybody. But I think the main thing is to just, I don't know whether people like this idea of a shaman. I think it's freaking marvelous, but like, I'm not sure that everybody will get it. So that's the first thing, is to establish that that's going to work.
Oh, I mean, I like the idea. It has that the mirror of what happened in the U.S., and it can be seen as a joke, a parody. Some people won't know what to think, so I can see it working. But and the reactions will vary, which is what we want, right? We don't want. I mean, yeah.
It's perfect. It's perfect slabs. So if you can't see the value of it, I would say you can't see the value of slabs, because it's just, you know, it's basically Operation Mindfuck. That's what slabs is. So it's basically it's a complete mindfuck to have a shaman. It's like, it's just, no one knows how to take that. You know, it's big. It's big enough to like make headlines in the Sun and stuff. But you know, it's like, what the hell do you do with that information? It just like blows your mind, and that's the whole point. I think it's wonderful, but oh man, it'd be so cool if you can pull it off.
Yeah, I mean, how would we introduce the idea to Russell? If anyone had, I mean, would you like to be the UK shaman? It's hard to.
Yeah, no, I just imagine that Faulty would call him up saying, we're doing this massive action in October, and we just thought it would be an absolute rise. It would be just hysterical if you got dressed up as the, you know, like the QAnon shaman and pranced around for a day or so we could get a few pictures and get you in the newspaper. And I'm sure it would appeal to, you know, Russell Brand's sense of juvenile mischief. Yeah, I think it would be an easy sell, actually. So, yeah. But let's see how it goes. Let's see how it goes. Yeah. So yeah, I'm trying to finish this document that explains from the user perspective what it's like in the ARG and stuff. So then maybe we can give that to Jeff Hull and those guys and say, look, this is what we're trying to do.
Oh yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, we would need to give them more. I mean, if we don't have a budget as they've asked, then we would need more substance in our and the idea probably. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking, is we need more substance to the idea. And we need something so that you can show it to people, you know, instead of pitching it to them. So it's kind of like the long form brochure, the long form business plan, without figures and stuff in it. You just put forward the mission, you know, and so people can see. But we're getting close to the stage where, you know, I'd also like to put it on kind of Extinction Rebellion and stuff, but we're getting close to the stage where people are already saying, you know, like, okay, if you're such a clever dick, then what should we do now? You say, well, that's a good place to get to. But we need. I've done lots of things about what to do next, but I haven't pulled them all together into one nice place. But if I put something like that out there, and you know, and let people tear it apart, then it would help for us to start arguing that this is the way to do it. Because people will pour scorn on it. Because it's new, right? And so we have to convince them that, yeah, we have to go up the old and start on the new. And it'll be divisive, right? So, at least half the organization is going to be lost in this change. But there's not much left of it.
Right. And yeah, it's important to get the ones who are, I guess, serious and who want to do something. You know, time is, we're running out of time, as people say.
Yeah, but there are a lot of people out there, you can see just in the upvotes and that, there are a lot of people who want to do something new. So I think there'll be a lot of people that will say this will work, or it's worth a shot, or the thing is that Exxon needs to experiment, and this is one experiment. They're not doing any experimentation worth a damn. I mean, we need grassroots, fundamental reinvention of classic tactics. The classic tactics have ended. So it's a monumental task to just upgrade them for the surveillance state and e-tyranny and Allison's dystopia. So yeah, there's a lot of work to do, but I would like to start developing it on Extinction Rebellion sub and booting people off that are just obstructive.
That sounds like a plan.
So, yeah. Well, please join me on some of those things so we can brigade it.
Yeah, I've already done, like, I know Sophie's done a few posts, and then I've helped her reply to a few people. So I've been pushing more on the geoengineering, how it's how all the pitfalls, and I've come across people who are in support, and I've been trying to look for research, and I'm glad I came up upon that video with Dane. So yeah, I'm just collecting things on the geoengineering side of it.
Did you see that PDF that I had with the big bad fix?
Oh, no, I'll have to check that out. Is it on? Did you post it on XR Mid, or?
I'll post it here because I did once, but it's so good that I'll post it again here. But this says it pretty much all, and so if you so yeah, I'll post it in the chat here. So that
Okay, yeah, I'll definitely check this out. Thank you.
So yeah, I think all of us should read that document. It's a book, but that book really lays it out, absolutely bang on. I keep on posting it whenever I mention geoengineering. I'll post a link to that, but you can see the guys don't want to read it. Most people respond in under a minute. They haven't even looked at it.
All right.
But I urge everybody to read that one. All right.
Great.
Well, we covered some ground today. All right. Well, let's take it out then on that note and just pause. And no, I must tell you something. I just before we go, just an anecdote. I'm actually in the island which I wrote the book about, and George, the key figure in my book, is around here. But anyway, we went to George's restaurant last night with somebody that I've interviewed a few times on my YouTube channel, and we're sitting there having a kind of doomer conversation, and there are like 6 English people in the next table, quite far away, like 2 meters away. The table's all 2 meters separate. And we're having this kind of doomer conversation, and this guy comes up, one of these 6 people, he comes up, and he says, do you mind toning it down or changing the subject? We're just trying to relax here, and the subject is really stressing us out. And I swear that I had a look, and these guys, they 6 people, they're not even talking to each other. They're all sitting with iPads. They're fucking having dinner, and they're sitting with iPads, all swishing like this. And I saw that there was one woman, she was looking at me dead in the eye. She had a face like a freaking gargoyle, and she hated the Duma conversation. She just hated, and she was looking daggers at me. And she went to her husband and made him get up and come and ask us to shut up. But I just thought, isn't that incredible? That basically we're having a normal Duma conversation about the end of the world, and people are so sensitive now that they and said that they're stressing us out talking about it. It just, I don't know. I just had to share it with you because it's such a picture of denial, especially in the place where I wrote my book. Is that basically these people are swiping on their screens, and it's like, don't want to hear about doom. We're here on a holiday to stress, de-stress, and and my feelings are so important, and you're stressing me out. You need to change your conversation. And it's like, it just epitomized to me where English people in particular are at. So just wanted to share that with you. Anyway, on that note, let's just pause and end it there. Boom. Thanks, everyone.
All right, yeah, thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
everybody.
Thank you for your help. Thanks.
Bye.
Take care in the week.
Take
Bye.
care.